We'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting for September 25th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lear?
Present.
Mr. Legess? Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff?
Here.
Mr. Hess?
Present.
Mr. Byrne?
Present.
Ms. Weber?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Ms. Parker?
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Here.
Mr. Zenz? Ms. Haas? Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Ms. Zucolo?
Present.
Mr. Dunnell? Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have no request for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing no one wishing to, we have no presentations. Move for approval of the minutes for August 28th. Mr. Byrne first, second from Mr. Olthoff. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We move to the Finance Department. Mr. McCarty. You have the reports in your packet, starting with the various miscellaneous financial reports. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for the email.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, now everybody has it. Good morning. Yeah, the first section, we'll go over, as Mr. Lear said, miscellaneous financial reports. We had a dip in the sales tax this month for some reason, so we'll continue to watch that. As you can see on the backside of the sales tax, when we break out the countywide and the amounts in the unincorporated area, you know, compared to a year ago, that amount is about half in the unincorporated area. So, but if you look at some of the other trends from the other years, the unincorporated trends are not necessarily consistent. So we'll keep an eye on that, you know, and see if other months here remaining, you know, pick that up or not. So, so we're watching that real close. The other items continue to trend in a positive way at this point, so I won't take too much time unless there's any questions on those reports.
I see no questions. We'll move on then to cash flow update, please.
On the cash flow update, going through not only the end of the year but into 2020 here, as we're lining up the things that are coming to light here for fiscal year 2020. And I just wanted to mention a few things. We had the same discussion with Moody's a week or so ago. You know, in a little perspective of our cash flow, our estimated ending cash flow for November of 19, if you compare it to where we ended up November of 18, we're now at $3 million higher on estimate on flow than we were at 18, and it's $6.5 million higher than where we ended in FY17 as of November 30th of 17. So very positive trend, and again, that trend is what I'm keeping in mind as I head into FY20 and whether or not, you know, we need to do a tax anticipation warrant or not. So we're still looking at that, watching that, but we're, you know, well ahead of, you know, we've been borrowing $2.5 million last couple of years. You know, we're 3 million, we're estimated to be 3 million higher here as we get to the end of fiscal year 19, heading into, you know, the drier months, if you will, in the springtime, you know, of 20. So just a little perspective on that as we go forward. And I include FY18 as well for you, just for comparison and, you know, analysis for those that like to look at things like that. So Just wanted to bring that up to you, you know, and identify that we're sitting right at $10 million in the bank as of today before this payroll goes out. So that's a really nice feeling. I'm able to sleep right now. So
Mr. Altoff.
Thank you, Chairman. When do we get our rating from Moody's?
well, I expected to have that for you this morning because they were going to communicate with us yesterday. But then yesterday we got the email and they put it off until this afternoon. So we should know it this afternoon, and we can distribute that as Chairman Wheeler. You know, we can, instead of waiting a month, we can share that with you. It's just, I thought we'd have it for today, but
Okay.
I don't have it.
Thank
right
you.
now.
Any other questions in regard to cash flow? Or the Moody? If not,
Yeah, the update on Moody's, yeah, unfortunately, like I said, we don't have it. I don't know, Chairman Wheeler, if you want to share anything about the call or not, anything to share with the committee.
It wasn't an awful call. It was one that we've been wanting to have for a couple years now. So they didn't rate us, they didn't look at us last year. They wanted to see a trend. And I think they've seen that. So we did discuss that it falls a lot quicker than it goes back up. And so I wouldn't expect us to be back up to, you know, the A range right away. But I think we should see some improvement. I wouldn't see any reason why not. We've had, I don't know, tremendous improvement. That's an understatement. But so these guys are they're the masters of understatement. They don't really get emotional about it, even though we try to get them excited about it. So is that pretty much a common theme, Steve? They just want the facts, and we're drilling down into, you know, what happens if, and then they want to know, you know, if things change, are you able to change? And that's part of the rating increase. You know, that's why we fell, and most people know we didn't change quick enough, and that's how we dug the hole. So in the future, I think this committee is committed to not having that happen again. So.
Well, in the industry, I've heard that, you know, they're fast to drop but slow to raise. So we'll see. But I believe that will go up, but you know, we might be a little disappointed how much until, you know, a few more years down the road. That's the only thing. So,
Mr. Kidner.
Thank you. What's our present rating? B what?
yeah, and the small case, uppercase means something with them. I think it's capital B, too small A, yeah, and then 3. I can give you that perspective as far as where we were at, where they move us to when I send it out.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, basically, that's the lowest step you can be in and be an investment grade. And then if you go below into that, it's a non-recommendation for investment. So even though we're not going to be buying anything anytime soon, you know, that would require a bond, I don't see. But we were as low as it could go before people would just say, we're not doing business with you at all. So.
Any other questions there? If not, we'll move on. As per the protocol of the auditor's office, he did have a conference that he attended with expenses involved. So there is a claim that he's presented to the Finance Committee. I would need a motion to approve that. Ms. Sakolo, Mr. Byrne, any discussion on the claim recommended for approval? Hearing no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Ms. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. Zucolo?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Are there any other claims for approval or recommendation?
I have no other
All right.
claim information.
We move to the fiscal year 20 interfund borrowing resolution. Do you have a copy of the resolution in your packet?
Yeah, this is the actual resolution from FY19 for FY19 that we're currently running on. So I just grabbed it, and it'll be updated to reflect the dates for fiscal year 20. So we're just being proactive and put it in place. We will still have some interfund borrowing at this point, so it's nice to be able to talk about no TAWs, but we're not at a point to be able to say no borrowing whatsoever yet. So this is to put in place for fiscal year 20. So this resolution will just work with the state's attorney's office and get it updated to go forward to the full board. Questions?
We need a resolution, motion to approve. Mr. Hess, is there a second? Ms. Parker, discussion, Mr. Kinzer?
Yes, so what I'm looking at is what was done in 2000, for 2019, and the new motion will be the same, except we'll change the resolution number and the dates.
Yes,
Thank you.
basically, yeah.
Mr. Wheeler?
Thank you. Just for perspective, the board was notified of this before, but we've gone from, I think the high water mark was around 6 million interfund, and now we're down to just over 2. And at the end of next year, it'll probably be at least half of that. So we're making substantial strides in that as well.
Any other discussion? Let's do a roll call on this one too, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff? Mr. Hess? Mr. Byrne? Ms. Weber? Mr. Payton? Ms. Parker? Mr. Kinzinger? Ms. Haas? Mr. Sponson? Ms. DeColo? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
General fund financial trend discussion.
Yeah, in your packet, we've got some graphs for you. Done some trending out to fiscal year through fiscal year 24. Basically, I took revenue, known revenue trends. I also took and did the same with expense trends, the compounding, and to take a look at what roadmap are we on, if you will. And there's a lot of positives as we have been discussing, and some cautionary as well. On the graph, you see a little bit of a dip there on the graph when we get between 23 and 24, and I got some information here, so we just wanted to highlight that. But at the same time, if you look, our recommended fund balance from GFOA would be about 20% is what they recommend per year revenue. So that would put us around 6 million. So we're right on the doorstep of the recommended, fund balance, being able to get back to that recommended fund balance, which is great news, and if you look at trends from the bottom up until, where we're at right now, that's a movement of $6.2 million if you look through estimated 19, and then the entire trend change from the bottom to the top is $10.3 million, what that means. So that's a substantial change, and something that we shared with Moody's, and have been sharing. And but also wanted to just discuss that there's a little bit of a warning light, if you will, a cautionary tale to this that we have to keep in mind, and we can do that going forward. So so I also put together the revenue and expense trends for the general fund, the next slide. So I broke up between 08 and 2016, and as you can see, that looks like chaos, and it was. Could you say the colors so people can't read the yeah, the ledger, the blue is the revenue, the green is expense. General fund. So on in front of you, yeah, the black is the revenue, and the light gray is the expense. Did it come out like that?
A little bit, but it's pretty.
Oh, it's very close the way the way it printed out. Sorry, the way the printers. So for the most part, in this first graph, the line that is the highest is the expense line, unfortunately, and you can see. Other than 08 and 2011, the expenses were higher until we got to 2016, where they basically matched up at that point. So you know, as we shared with you, you know, and well, I don't know if we want to take a trip down memory lane. We actually had to take a trip down memory lane with Moody's because we had a brand new person. So we had to do a little explaining what the story was. So this you know, does a lot of explaining. And then we go to the next slide, and we can interact in these as you want. The bottom line, the orange line is expense, and the blue line is revenue. So this is what is getting us out of the hole and corresponds to the upward trend that we saw in the fund balance graph. But the cautionary tale is that the revenues start peaking and become level, but the compound expense crosses over in 2024 at what we know right now. So, you know, if nothing changed and we continued on the path, they will eventually, you know, could eventually cross. But if there's additional revenues, that would stretch that out, obviously. Or, you know, and as we can, if we take a look at it at this point, you know, with expenses, you know, to manage that, we got plenty of time to identify this. And if we all work together, you know, we're dealing with about $650,000 is what we're dealing with. And when you take into account new changes, when you look at salaries, health insurance, utility changes, you're dealing with every year in a general fund between $500,000 and $750,000 of new dollars every year with those changes. And to put it in perspective, for like property tax, that's about 130,000 new dollars is all with the property tax caps that we can gain out of that. You can't just go fill, you know, the gap, whatever gap you need. So, and then we know that with the jail being full and the bed rental program, that one of the major sources of that change is that's why it caps off, because, you know, add until the point, if we can and when we can get another increase, I just plugged in what we know right now, you know, and then as the expenses compound, the other items, you know, sales tax, income tax, property tax, that it's not enough to continue to sustain that with the compound growth of expense coming forward. So I just wanted to bring awareness to it, and if we all work together, I believe we can figure this out, you know, by the time we get there. But we need to know, you know, what it looked like, and I wanted to share that with you. Obviously, new information is going to come up and, you know, and change, but you know, we have to be aware that the current trend, you know, may not last forever, and we're going to have to be aware of that and proactive with that. So that was the main thing. But there's a lot of great information there, you know, with building the trends. When you build the fund balance, you're also building your cash reserves, you know, not borrowing from others in interfund or externally. However, we do have to keep in mind that that trend does come back together potentially at some point in the future here. So that's what I wanted to share. There's a mix of good and cautionary news all at the same time here as we look down the road, if you will. So.
If I understand you right, you're saying the three main drivers of expense increase are in terms of health insurance, salaries, and utilities?
Utilities, yeah, there's other drivers within, you know, built in, but those are the three main ones that affect us.
Now, if I look at that chart, between about 18 and 20, you have 1 degree of increase, and then after 21, does it level off a little? I'm really trying to get a feel for that in terms of the rate of increase.
Yeah, some of that has to do, we've done 3 leases this year. We've done early in the year, we did a squad lease, then we did the radios, and then we are currently ready to start in another squad lease. So that's part of it, but also, you know, the other items that we're looking at going forward. And so that's where, if we, you know, we've kind of had things that had to get caught up And then I just kind of projected normal, normal process, normal rotation, things after that, going forward. So that might be why it tailed off a little bit more.
Mr. Kissinger,
Yeah,
first.
I'm looking at the revenue side, and I'm piggybacking on the question you asked, so I'm gonna ask it a different way. But between 18 and 20, we show a rate of increase, significant. And it was a good year and project to be a good year, but everything that I read locally is that we've got more activity, more property increase, more revenue sources. How did you account for that as you leveled off and almost decreased the revenues of 20 to 24?
Well, some of the decrease potentially has to do with grants. Some of our grants do sunset,
Okay.
and some of them are fairly large. They may get renewed. So we went with what we know right now, and if that happens.
So this included up to 19 includes grants, but from 19 forward, there are no grants in the revenue
No, they're
side.
grants, but some of them we know are sunsetting in
Understood.
21, 22. They may get renewed. You know what I mean? But
I
we kind of went with if it stopped. We have a contract through X date. We took a look at and the biggest change on the revenue side is the change in the bed rental program, and then we got the increase from 80 to 90 that started in March of this year. And so when you take the average number of beds that they've been working with this year with our local, and then the rented averages, and take and plug that number in, that's where it finally does taper off from previous numbers. So there's a little bit of change in the revenue that I went conservative, but it with what we know, and if that changed, that's how the trend showed up. So at this point,
Mr. Altoff.
Thank you, Chairman. Was that March increase, was that a COLA? Or do we have a COLA with the bed rentals?
I don't believe we do.
no,
Cost of
that's
living?
a set amount until the next time it's changed.
It's a 3-year, did you say?
If I remember what the sheriff said, I
I don't
believe.
remember.
That's a number that obviously the sheriff will interact in. And I'm not saying that this will happen again, but the $80 a day, I believe, was here for like 10 years. So we hope not to repeat that,
It's
but
23.
that's again, looking at what information that we have available, that certainly can be worked on and possibly change, but that's
Just keep
moving. Yes.
keep moving up, and your income remains level. Okay.
Mr. Weaver.
I just want to, it's 23 is when it can be renegotiated, as it was a 5-year deal. Yeah, it's in 23, and I believe 20 and 24, I think that's when the jail bond is done. I believe that's the year, either 24 or 25. I believe it's 24. I think the bond for Courtview is done right around the same time, and we should be through the with the rate of that we're having with the juvenile detention. Remember, that's a kitty of money that's sitting to the side. We were planning on budgeting that, like we'd have to start paying for that again around that time period, but we're at really low levels. The laws have changed, so that may last a little longer. But again, things that will impact in there. Most of our labor agreements are through 20 and 21. So we'll see. That's why Steve's doing this, is to let you know that any hit to expense beyond what's predicted, that gap will close. That's our fund balance gap between those two lines, both in the previous, when we went into the hole, that's how we got into the hole, and then now that we're getting out. So if we close those together, then we won't have the fund balances required at the end of that time period. And then what do you do afterwards? Because with tax caps, they're good for the taxpayers, obviously, but when you have $600,000 a year increase to your expenses just because of normal whatever, where does that come from?
Any other questions, discussion? Seeing none, anything more you have?
No, that's all I have.
If you have nothing more, thank you very much. We'll move on. Administration Department. Ms. Speckman. We have 3 items from Administration Department. Good morning.
Good morning. Just a quick update. There's not a whole lot right now, but I just wanted to keep you apprised of where we're at as we head into budgeting and year end and looking at fiscal 2020. I did include the most updated premium versus claims report that came in from the insurance company Group Health just towards the end of last week. As you can see, July actually went down to 83%, which is a good trend there. We're down under 100%, which is what we want, and around 80 to 85% is a good number from what we're told. So we're at 83%, that's good. It won't impact the renewal calculation. That was through June. So, but it does represent a good trend for us, and we look at that as we go through.
If I might, could we use that in negotiation with the?
We do talk with them about major differences that are happening,
Okay.
but it's part of the conversation, but
Yeah.
by the same token, we don't want to go too far into that, because what if August is back up again before then?
Okay.
So we are still working on that. Andy and I received an email yesterday from our broker. He is waiting on a report from United Healthcare to be able to give to Blue Cross Blue Shield. So he's taking it out for a competitive bid. So we'll see what that does to where we're at with our current provider, United Healthcare. So if you remember, they initially started at a renewal of, let's see, 8.5%. They brought it down 2.5% to a flat 6% just based on history. So we'll see if utilizing Blue Cross Blue Shield, some competitive bid there, can help us a little bit more. The other option on the table currently is moving some of our ancillary products, the life, vision, dental would be considered. If we move those to United Healthcare from the current providers, would they be able to give us a discount based on that as well? We want to look at what those prices do compared to what we have right now for our employees. Those ancillary products are all paid 100% by the employees. So it doesn't help them to save on one hand if we're just going to increase it on the other, but it is some of the things that we're looking at. So that continues to be worked on currently with, we have communicated that we need the final numbers here for this committee next month. So we should have a final proposal next month. Questions? And then the only other thing we are working on, I talked last month with the executive committee. I just wanted to make sure this committee is aware as well. We're looking at EAP providers. Our current EAP provider canceled their service to us. So we are with
EAP. Remind me EAP.
Employee Assistance Program. So it is a way, most commonly people think of it as a place for employees to call and maybe get some counseling for a relatively short period of time, maybe 3 sessions. The intent is to help an employee determine if they need assistance long-term and how to find that somewhere, okay? So that's why it's typically like a short 3 or 6 sessions depending. But there are a lot of other products. They've branched out, EAPs have branched out to provide other types of assistance. Some wellness counseling perhaps. All of the plans that we've looked at 4 different providers, and there's maybe 10 different plans they have offered us pricing on. They all include HR and supervisor counseling as a part, unlimited, so that our supervisors, if they're having an employee issue, could call in and get some assistance, like how to approach a certain employee issue that's going on in their department. So EAPs have changed over time. For a while, they kind of fell away after mental health, started being provided as a part of all healthcare plans. In the olden days, way back in the 90s, it wasn't necessarily so. And so you would guide your employee into an EAP. Currently, with mental health being covered by health insurance, it's not as a critical issue, but it is a way for employees to kind of maybe step into a counseling session that they're maybe not comfortable doing on their own. So there's value there. The prices that we've had, they're per person, per head, per employee head, per month, and they range from using 535 employees on average that we have currently. The least costly is 6,800, and the most costly is 12,500. So there's a range there. While as a percentage it's huge, it's about $7,000 difference, $6,000 difference. So it's not a huge difference. We're looking to budget for next year, do we have room to add this as something to help our employees?
Mr. Washington.
Do we have a record of the usage of the program?
Each of these would include a utilization report. So as Andy and I were talking about it, would it make sense to go with the least costly the first year, understand how much it's being utilized, and maybe from there make a different determination?
Mr. Reader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to that point, the previous provider canceled us because of low or no usage. Then we started getting flooded with people wanting to know about our EAP program.
Yeah.
It was ironic how that happened.
Very
Then we
ironic.
started
It's
looking
like,
at it. So we can't give you the number, because I could probably guess it's a goose egg, but I mean, there probably wasn't anybody, because that's how they got paid.
Right.
We didn't have to pay for that service, but
Right.
if we used it, then we paid for it. So
Right.
they said, well, we're done. So, it was,
Right.
I didn't really get that much of an explanation in our breakup letter, but it was, there was, it was definitely, it was us, it wasn't them. So we can go with that. Is that a fair assessment? As soon as we got that, then people started calling you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It was within 30 days. It's like, are you kidding me? But I think part of it too goes to communication, and each of these include either monthly emails, newsletters, things like that. So it becomes an education process with our work group so that they know what services are there and available to them. Yeah.
Yes.
Is just your intent to bring that back for next month's finance meeting with
Yes.
this? Okay,
Yes.
so you're looking for kind of a head nod, yeah, put it in there, let's see what it is. The lower level one? Is that, you want to see them all? Because there's a lot. There's a lot, so.
Yeah, there
just
are a
give
lot
us
of
some
them.
direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It appears the consensus of the committee is to bring one, the lower level one.
Okay. Okay. Great.
All
Any
right.
other questions for me?
Well, we'll move to the Vanguard Energy proposal.
That's not me.
Okay. Mr. Mike Holmes. You have a document in your packet. You can start to look at. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you have for us?
Okay. In your packet, you should see some information regarding the recommendation for energy purchases. And again, I'm with Vanguard Energy. We handle the natural gas and electricity for the county's commercial buildings and accounts. What we're looking at based upon current pricing as opposed to what's available right now for a future for the future term, there's about 2 months left on the current fixed price that we have in place, which worked out very well for us over the past couple of years. It was a full requirement fixed price. At some point during the first portion of this year, there was some extreme volatility in the market. That fixed price protected you from critical days and market volatility. So what we're looking to do is pretty much the same thing. It's our job to look at opportunities within the market where there is good opportunity to lock in a full requirement fixed rate for you. That will help solidify the budget and protect you against that market volatility. And right now, if you take a look at the graphs on the second page, there's two graphs. One is for electricity, one is for the natural gas. And you can see that they're both very low right now and below the long-term trend line. I also have a couple of savings analysis that you should see in the packet as well.
Is that this one?
I didn't keep any for myself. It's actually that one. Yep.
And we got another on the back.
Okay, there we go.
All right, so you have those in your packet. Why don't we have a motion to approve the proposal, and then we can have further discussion. Mr. Washington moves. Mr. Payton seconds. Do you have anything more before questions?
That would be it. In regard to the proposals, you see the savings on the electricity of the 32,000 annually and about 7,000, 6,500 on the natural gas side.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody knows that we do aggregation for the county, electrical aggregation. This isn't that. This is for our buildings, our usage.
Right.
I just want to make sure because it confuses me from time to
Right.
time as well. So
Right.
I want to make sure the committee knows that. We do the other aggregation later next year.
Right. The aggregation program is for the residential sector of the county. Residential.
Mr. Kisner?
As one of the newer board members, I guess I have the right to ask the question. No. Thank you, Mr. Washington. There are several companies that provide this type of service. Has the county checked with other companies, or do we just automatically renew someone who has provided that service in the past?
Ms. Tweeder, would you want to address that?
This, how do I put it? The service is like a skill, if you will. The being able to look at those markets and make those recommendations. So we're actually going with the recommendations or the people that have done it for us in the past, and it's been very good advice. So if we shopped, it would almost be, they would be looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, just different suppliers to, provide this gas or whatever, service or electrical service that we're looking at.
Correct.
Yeah, they would go out on the market.
And again, we're looking at, we have multiple supply options as well. So you're getting a very competitive bid, not to mention just the sheer volume that Vanguard has behind it. Gives us preferential pricing that we receive from our supply options as well.
Follow up? Mr. Kisner, did you have a follow-up?
I'm a contractor also, and I know that you get pricing and then you mark up the pricing to cover your costs. And sometimes everybody that I work with gets bids from the contractors to see who can do that work at the most reasonable cost. And that is my point.
Okay. Did you want to comment on it?
And exactly what I was saying. That's what I'm saying is our supply options. Those bids that we get in are being brought in and looked at, and we're looking at that lowest possible price to provide for the county.
And then the contractor does a markup to cover his operational costs, fixed costs.
Okay.
And many times in a bid, we have this disparity of costs.
Right.
From low to high, and you say, how can that happen if we're all using the same companies?
Right.
And
Well,
I'm just asking, what service do you provide other than an intellectual service to go out and get bids?
Well, again, we've been serving, as far as your usage and your usage habits and whatnot, we've been serving the district for over 15 years. I myself have been serving the district since 2000, or not the district, but the county since 2002.
Any other questions, comments? We have a motion to approve the proposal. This would involve spending money, so we would need a roll call vote.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff? Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger? Ms. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson? Ms. DeColo? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
All right, that deals with those from the administration department. We'll move to the treasurer's office in a moment here. You've received the treasurer's report in the packet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You've received the treasurer's report in your emails. You have part of that in your packet. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I just have a few things here. Last week, we made our third distribution of tax money. I think, Steve, you got that, right?
We saw a head nod, yes.
Interest, I know I've talked about it. We've been trying to make some additional income on our money. And because rates had gone up for a little while, as of the 31st of August, we are at $270,000 in interest income. So I'm pretty comfortable saying that we're going to be probably $315 for the year, somewhere in there. We had a trustee auction, as many people know, on September 10th at Quality Inn. And there's a lot of confusion between the auction and the tax sale. The auction is surplus properties that the trustee has deed to and that we try to sell and get back on the tax rolls. The good news is it was an incredible tax sale. It's in the Clarion room. I don't know if you know which room that is. It's the biggest room they had. It was, there's chairs, rows and rows of chairs. It was standing room only. To give you an idea of the size of the auction, in 2015 we did $427,000, 16 720, 17 806, 18 856, and this year 1.148, for an average of $5,441 per property. I think we sold 212 properties. There was a ton of interest, which is really encouraging, and I think it speaks to maybe what Mr. Kinzinger was saying about the area and people having some money. What seemed to me was there was a lot of investment in potentially rental property, so that's good because it puts those properties back on our tax rolls, and we like that. And there was we sold a properties sell very reasonably, but I think the highest was $45,000, which was good. And people picked up 2 flats for $4,000. Granted, they need a lot of work, but needing a lot of work means people have to do the work. People have to buy the supplies to do the work with. So I was very, very happy with the way the auction went this year and the way it's trending up. Obviously, I think some people have asked me, well, why is it going up? Obviously, there's economic, maybe some more enthusiasm in the market, but we also have been more aggressive in terms of working with the trustee to get properties sold, to get mobile homes sold, so that we're not sitting on these properties, on and on and on. It's a lot of work, and frankly, it costs us a lot of money. Tax collection. Through yesterday, we've collected 97%, or 187 million. We have roughly 7.5 million outstanding right now. Now, there's, we're late right now, but people are still paying, and tax sale won't be till November 13th. So there's still, you can still pay till the 12th or the 11th. So we'll continue to take in tax monies, but 97% is in. I wanted to give you a breakout so you can understand that where that money's come in from. $81 million of that money has come in through the mail. Banks have collected $52 million, and out of those banks, I'll just give you the top 4. Homestar, $14.2 million, Midland, $9 million, Municipal, $6 million, People's, $5 million. I think what jumps out to me is if you combine Homestar and Midland, that's 23.2 million they collected, and they're combined now. We've taken in 44 million at the counter, and we're about 10.2 online. And online is trending just like it was last year. It's the growth is flat on it, which was a little disappointing. I was hoping that had gone up. So just one last note on that. $125 million total in terms of mail and counter have been collected by the office here. So it's a tremendous amount of work that's been done downstairs by Diane Spade, Angelica Moore, and Shakira Parker, and Donna Casino, and I just want to say thank you to all of them. Lastly, I want to mention that on Sunday I spoke at the Caldwell Chapel AME Zion Church. They had asked me to come and speak. We helped them acquire some auction property. We walked them through the process. They wanted to buy some property around the church that was vacant, and they want to clean it up, and obviously that's a great thing for them, great for us. So I went and spoke, and we were very warmly received. We talked about the payment plan, which everybody seemed to like. And I'd just like to say a thank you to Pastor Lori Holmes for the invitation, and to congratulate her on her 20th anniversary of her pastorship that was going on Sunday. That's all I have, and I'm certainly open to questions.
Are there any questions at this point? We have a report before us. Could we have a motion to combine and approve the treasurer's reports? Mr. Hess and Mr. Payton seconds. All in favor of approving the report, say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Questions on Mr. Africano's comments? Seeing none. Don't want to rush you off, but we'll move along.
Good to see you, George.
All right. In your packet, you do have the sheriff's monthly update. We'll look at that a moment on the screen. That was presented to criminal justice and discussed there. Many of the items are the same. The sheriff was very conscious that we continue to have a relatively high number of local inmates. He also pointed out the discouraging fact that we've had a number of traffic facilities already this year, and he is concerned about the role of speed in those traffic facilities, or fatalities, excuse me. I don't know if there's anything else that we'd want to highlight. Mr. Hess, is there anything, or Mr. Byrne? Yeah, just a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Per the meeting too, he did express concern about the amount of people being re-released back into the community. That was a topic he had brought up from IDOT, from Department of Corrections.
Okay. Anything else we would want to highlight for those who can share? If not, that was for our information, so we'll move on to the auditor's office. Mr. Lee. You have the commentary for the auditor's reports, and you've received an email to complete reports. We have a motion to accept the monthly claims. Mr. Swanson, a second. Accept monthly claims. Mr. Kulo, any discussion on the monthly claims? If there's no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Ms. Haas? Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. DeColo? Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And can you share with us, Mr. Lee?
Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. We excuse me, didn't have much out of the ordinary. You know, the standard issues that we do have that are systemic to the operations of the county, I have communicated. So you have that. I also wanted to let people know we have had a very good response as we traveled the county, kind of educating folks on the Dixon, Illinois situation. As you know, Kelly Pope from DePaul University did a documentary on how some of those issues happened, where $53.7 million were stolen over a period of 20 years. And we had about 50 people who attended those seminars that we did. And so we're very proud of that. And we hope to do some more and just continue to educate the public on ways in which they can be involved in their government to ensure that those kinds of things don't happen here. So we're very excited about that. We issued the Q3 report for the period ending on 31 August. And I did change some things on it, presented a couple of dashboards. That is in the abbreviated report that you all got emailed to you. If you go to the auditor's website, you can see the full report, and it shows all of the disaggregated departmental information, fund information, and all of that for your reading pleasure. We do have a lot of positive things that have been happening in the county insofar as spending and so forth is concerned, but also economically insofar as business expansion and economic activity that's taking place. And so it is a good time, in my opinion, to be in Kankakee County. And with that, if there are any specific questions, I will entertain them at this time. Otherwise, I do thank you for your time.
Are there any questions for the auditor? I don't see any, so.
All right, have a good day. Thank you.
Under other business, we have a grant agreement that has come before us regarding courthouse. Sorry, we have a grant agreement regarding the courthouse. Mr. Chairman, did you want to say anything in regard to that?
Yeah, this is the culmination. This was started way back when with Representative Parkhurst, and the current legislature, governor's office had extended these opportunities. Basically, it's taken us a long time to get all this the proper certifications necessary to move forward, but it's basically addressing courthouse things that we need to have done that are related to ADA, and they don't pay for everything, obviously, and we're still waiting to hear back from the Attorney General on their final stamp of approval on the ADA courtroom and the ramp, but this would allow us to take a large chunk of that, along with leveling the steps, going in and out of the building, the curb work that needs to be done because it's unsafe as you're going through the circle and the circle drive and things like that. It's basically to make sure the building is both accessible and safe. And so pennies from heaven type stuff. We're fortunate to have this, and unfortunately, it's with one of those things you got to spend it and then they give it back to you. I would say if we're going to do it, let's do it before there potentially could be a change in the governor's office, because that's what happened to us last time. We did it, and then we didn't get the reimbursement because there was a changeover in the office, and the new governor said, "I'm not paying any of those old grants." So I think we're okay. We've got a few years to do this. So,
is there a motion to approve? Mr. Hess and Mr. Washington seconds. Any discussion on the motion to approve signing this agreement? Hearing no discussion, it's involving spending money. We'll need a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lear?
Aye.
Mr. Washington?
Aye.
Mr. Olthoff?
Aye.
Mr. Hess?
Aye.
Mr. Byrne?
Aye.
Ms. Weber?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Kinzinger?
Aye.
Ms. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Ms. DeColo?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Is there any old business to come before the committee?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got an email from Commerce yesterday, Department of Commerce, regarding we had to have our 0.75% tax for the municipalities on cannabis dispensaries and sales certified by the end of the month, they emailed me back saying, well, the law's kind of changed. You guys can go up to 3% now. So is it this committee's intent that they would like to revisit that next month to take a look at that percentage? It would only be for those that are in the municipal areas. But within that ordinance, it also has what the county tax would be as well. So right now it's 3.75 for the unincorporated areas and 0.75 for the municipality. So I just want to get the tenor of the community to see if they want to bring it back and discuss another number for the municipal number.
What's the pleasure of the committee? I see some indications, yes, they'd like that on the agenda.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other old business? Any new business? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Mr. Altoff will do, and Mr. Hess a second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
All right.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.